Before we get into the backstory about the song, how you guys became a duo, what was it about your upbringing that put you onto the pathway of being interested in music and becoming a producer?
I mean, it started with my parents. My dad played in the NBA for 10 years, and he grew up playing basketball. But like, it's funny because like the way it is now, even with basketball players and musicians, they all like run together. So back then, it was jazz musicians. All my dad's best friends were jazz musicians, like O.C. Smith to Les McCann. You know what I mean? All these people. So I grew up with a lot of incredible music around the house. My brother Jalal, my big brother, started DJing, and he got a mixer for his birthday, and he picked it up and he was really into it, and then he went away to college, and I kind of just took over. I took
Hmm.
over what he was doing, and I had a friend in junior high who had turntables. So I like convinced him somehow to let me borrow his turntables, and I started like literally doing parties. I saved up enough money to give him his stuff back, and then I like bought my own turntables, and I just kept DJing from there. So DJing was like really like the real jump off. So my dad also coached at Compton College. A lot of people don't know this, but I grew up, going to Compton College practice and all that kind of stuff. And all his players were from New York. So they used to get tapes sent to them from New York. They would have Red Alert, Molly Mall, Mr. Magic, all those tapes, and I would hear that around the house. They would be over at my dad's house, so we would just be hanging out with them, and they'd be playing this incredible music. I'm like, what is this? Um, and I just fell in love with hip hop. That was it for me. I met a friend in 10th grade who he already had his own studio. Like he already renovated his garage. It was like the first home studio I ever been to. You know how they talk about Paul C, like a lot of
Yeah.
producers like he was like a Paul C for us. Like he was like already using like Cubase, and he already had a sampler. He had an S950, he had an a SP12, so I learned a lot of stuff from him. His name is Frank, and he just like, we kind of started our company, me, him, and Chase. We started our company, and that's how Self Scientific came about. So we like recorded some of our earlier stuff with him and our first demos and all that stuff. So that's what led us to Return, But before that, we had released one 12-inch. DJ Premier was playing it. We were just making our way on the underground, at the time.
So I just want to talk about like the message of the song because it's quite interesting. Because at the
Yeah.
beginning, Chase says,
To the way we were before the influx of drugs and money occurred.
so clearly he's kind of like insinuating at the time that he made this song, hip hop had deviated from what it was originally. Do you want to
Yeah.
elaborate kind of what he was talking about?
I feel like that's when hip hop started making that turn for commercial. It was really commercialized. Like you had Bad Boy, you had the shiny suit thing, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And it was like it was getting away from its essence, you know what I mean? Like obviously we love Biggie, we love all that stuff, but there's another element that it came to. And I feel like once people realized that hip hop was generating a lot of money, I think that's when um, people were making decisions that weren't about the art of it. It was just more about being commercial and selling records, you know what I mean? And people were just, it becomes a thing where it becomes pop. Once something becomes pop, people jump in and they don't have the same intentions that you had starting out. We got in it for the art of it. We still love it for the art of it. And I think that was like kind of like our first like manifesto of like just being like, no, this is what we stand for. We stand for the real hip hop, what we grew up on, the innovators, the pioneers, and what it stood for us. You know what I mean? Like,
And this was 98. Now fast forward to 2024, 26 years later. How would you compare it in regards to what you've been talking about?
I mean, it's just a big business. I mean, now we got people that are billionaires off of hip hop. You got Kanye, you got Jay-Z, so it's still big business, I think. But what you're finding out now, especially with streaming and you got all this other stuff, is that, you still have to be, I mean, even when you talk about, the Drake and Kendrick thing, or whatever, it's like, it's kind of like art versus commerce in a way. It's like, the art, to me, creativity drives this business no matter what. So it's like something could be popular, and then something else is going to come along and shift everything and change just from an artistic standpoint, from a creative standpoint, and that's happened throughout, especially the journey for hip hop. But I mean, even just in music in general, it's like, art and creativity drive the business. That's where we're at now. We're fighting the commercial side because anybody can get into hip hop. You could have a kid that's 14 years old that can get a laptop and create a song. They don't really know what they're doing, but that's also part of hip hop too. It's like a lot of people, I didn't know how to really play an instrument or do anything. I didn't know what I was doing, but you pick it up and you try to learn, and hopefully at a certain point a light bulb switches on. You're like, oh, okay, this is what it's about. But for a lot of kids, they look at it as a way to make money, a way to be famous. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are more into the fame than the art.
It's interesting in the beginning of what you said. You said, when I was speaking to you about the message of return, you were saying hip hop was taking a direction where it was become more commercialized, right? Mm-hmm. So now let me ask you this question, right? Do you think you've arguably participated at, i.e., created commercial records? And
For sure.
So, I mean, I guess you've kind of moved along with the trend, if by your own admission.
I've had moments. I mean, I don't know if that's 100% true. I say, like, for me, I ended up being on records that were commercially successful. I don't know if like I was trying to be commercial.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. That's a difference.
So like, it's a difference. Like, I think like when I worked with Eminem, there was a certain style that he was doing at the time that I knew that he wanted, that they told me that they wanted, or, I just kind of, in my mind, was like, man, I wonder how Eminem would sound over a rock, with a rock backdrop, like an aggressive rock sound. You know what I mean? And, it happened to work. It just happened to work, and it happened to be like the biggest album that year. You know what I mean? We're up for album of the year and all that kind of stuff. So, I think I just go with my gut. I go with my gut. I don't think I'm really like, oh, this is going to sell millions and millions of records, because that's not just my motivation. You know what I mean? My motivation is like, I want to try something that I've never done before, or I want to see, can I dabble into this? Can I mix these different genres? Can I, what I mean? I look at Rick Rubin, or, people like that are innovators that have worked successfully able to do that. And that was innovative at the time. There was no standard for that.
I think you made an important distinction. You can create something that's organic that ends up being commercially successful.
Yeah.
But then that's different from trying to make something that's commercially successful. So I think that's the distinction right there. Yeah. That's a good distinction you made right there.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to the next song, guys. It's okay. So this one actually has a sample, right? So I'm going to play the sample, right? As soon as you know the name of the song and the artist that DJ Khalil produced that used this sample, just come off your mic, say your name. I'll stop the song to acknowledge the fact you said your name. If you get the answer right, you hear this wonderful sound, right? If you get the answer wrong, you hear this sound. And you don't want to hear that. All right, so let's do this. Check this out.